So today is my 1 year anniversary of sobriety, abstinence from alcohol. And I wanted to share some things, just some insight to my journey, just give some context around my alcohol abuse, what it was for me, and then some of the lessons learned from this past year that are really encouraging, that make me committed to staying sober for the rest of my life. And it's kind of, hopefully these lessons will be beyond the normal, oh, I'm in like great physical shape, because even that's a wonderful byproduct of being sober is I don't miss workouts anymore. I'm motivated for workouts. I get up early in the morning. My motivation is like at an all-time high for that. Not hungover anymore, feeling like physically bad. But I want to talk more about some of the more mental, emotional realizations that I've had over the past year. And I want to start off by saying that I don't think sobriety is necessarily for everyone. I don't think it has to be for everyone. I don't think everyone has to be sober. And in fact, I really think that it's all about figuring out what substances you have a toxic relationship with, or you might have a toxic relationship with, and then just being honest with yourself about those relationships. For some people it might be cannabis. For me, it was alcohol. And so I kind of want to talk about my road to sobriety, but in order to do that, I want to break down where it came from, like why maybe alcohol was such a huge part of my life until now. And I got wasted for the first time when I was 15 years old, with a couple guys from the high school football team. And we had a great time. It was like super duper fun. And from that point on, we would do it quite often, pretty much as often as we could. We would call it going fishing, and we would try to get some, homeless guys to buy us beer, and we'd give them the rest of the change, and it worked out pretty often. So always associated alcohol with having a good time. And for a long time it was, it was a little risque behavior, a good time. And then I went to college, and I might as well have majored in binge drinking in college. And it was where alcohol started to be a release valve for me, or at least I viewed it as a release valve. Partying on the weekends, and sometimes on like Thursday nights was a big party night at West Point, where people would just get hammered. And, it was also like a big culture in the military, which started for me in college, and then just continued throughout my time in the Army. And there were definitely times when I used alcohol as a negative coping mechanism for myself. I certainly remember right before we deployed, I had lost my platoon sergeant he had cysts in his knee, so he wasn't going to be deploying with us to Afghanistan. I lost my section leader to a brain tumor that he wasn't going to be deploying with us. And then the guy that was supposed to replace him, he wasn't going to be deploying with us either, because he had elevated liver enzymes, I think it was. And so I lost my top three NCOs, the people that bring the most amount of experience and know-how to the platoon, right before my first deployment. And we were going to a really kinetic place in Afghanistan, and I was scared. I started drinking like crazy then. I was drinking every single day leading up to that deployment. Didn't drink the whole time during deployment. You can't over there. And then came back and then kind of fell right into old habits. And in the military, it's really funny because drinking a lot is kind of a point of pride. And it goes with that youthful, ego, boastfulness a little bit. But I remember being so proud of the fact that I could, stay up drinking until 2 a.m. and out-drink all my soldiers. And then I could get up at 5 a.m. and I could out-PT them in the morning. Which was, looking back, it's fun to kind of laugh about now, but that's kind of when I should have started to maybe see some signs that I was binge drinking quite more than I should have. But I don't think my binge drinking turned into really elevated problem drinking until I got out of the military and I started writing more. And I love writing. I still love writing. But I started drinking every time I was writing. I needed to be drinking in order to write, is what I was telling myself. And that's when it became a lot more habitual for me, because I was still partying just as hard, if not harder. And then I was also drinking while I was working, or so I was telling myself I was working. And so it began to kind of take more and more of a toll on me throughout my adult life. But it was something that I had to come to on my own. A lot of times when people are struggling with substances, they have people in their lives that are telling them that they're struggling with substances. And I certainly did as well. But it's very easy to be resistant to those people that are telling you that you have a problem, because you can easily look around and say, like, well, you got your own problems, like maybe it's the same problem that I have, and you're trying to call me out, like, and then you can kind of, if you're someone like me and you're not like at rock bottom, you can kind of justify your drinking with like, well, I still have XYZ successes in my life, and I don't need to change. There's nothing wrong with me. It's really easy to be resistant to that, and I say that in case you have a loved one in your life that is struggling with substance abuse or drugs and alcohol. I think the best thing that you can do is just show them love, and more importantly, show yourself love by showing up for yourself, working as hard as you can on your own stuff, and just being a good example. I think that's like a really powerful tool that none of us really use because it's really hard. It's really hard to be the one in front leading by example. But that is one of the strongest, most powerful weapons that we have, is an example to follow. So I'll say that. And so eventually I started considering what my life might look like if I kind of, pulled back on the drinking a little bit, because one of the things that was happening was it was taking a toll physically on me. It was making it hard to work out, which I've always enjoyed working out. I love it. It was making it hard to make my workouts. And I just started noticing that I was like sluggish, didn't have as much energy, and I was getting a little bit older. And I just knew logically in my head, like, man, you can't keep this up forever. So I started getting a little curious about it. My friend calls it sober curious. I loved it. And I started experimenting with like rules for myself. So I would say, okay, I'm only going to drink, twice a week, or I'm only going to drink 3 drinks in one night if I drink. I'm only going to drink on the weekends, whatever. And it did not take long at all for me to start breaking all of those rules that I set for myself, which was really eye-opening for me. And it took about, I'd say a good like 4 months of this like sober curious phase for me to realize, like, okay, something else bigger needs to happen. I need to set a lengthier goal. I need to spend a longer period of time sober. And I had this epiphany when it was my birthday last year, and my wife and I were out drinking, and that was we usually had a lot of fun doing that together. And she kind of had an issue come up for her, and I was really resistant to talking about it with her. I was drunk on my own, so I was mad at her because I felt like she was like ruining my birthday, and I was just being selfish because it wasn't about me and this is my day, all these ridiculous things. And I realized that I didn't have the tools to talk to her either. And it took me until the following morning where I just like sat with it long enough, and I just said, man, like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I have to change. I have to change something. And so I committed that morning, a year ago today, that I would not drink for the next year. I was going to take a year off of drinking, and I was going to look at it again after this. And man, what an eye-opening, powerful year this has been. If you just want to watch this video to right now, and you think that you might have like some sort of an issue with a substance, that goal of a year and actually trying to accomplish that goal of a year it's fantastic. I highly recommend it, that you try. And if you fail, that's okay. Like, it's all part of the process. But going without something for a year will show you so much about your relationship with that something, whatever that is. For the first few months of sobriety, I made up so many narratives in my head, and I got to examine those narratives for the first few months about why I wasn't drinking anymore, and why I was even drinking in the first place. And so I had a lot of the like fears that I had, turned out I was making it all up in my head. I had a lot of fears about going sober. And I'll hit on a few of those. One of them was that I'm not creative unless I'm drinking, because that was one thing I was really worried about, that I wasn't going to be able to have fun writing. I wasn't going to be able to express myself writing if I wasn't drinking. And that's just simply not the case. I'm far more creative. I like my ideas more. I write better. My grammar's better. And then my capacity for work goes way up when I don't have booze in me. I don't get distracted. I'm able to focus for a longer amount of time. All these things. I had this other narrative built up that my wife and I, our relationship would suffer because of it, because that was one of our favorite things to do. We were partiers. We really enjoyed it, and so we'd go out and we would have we'd have good food and we would have drinks together and we'd just play cards and we'd have this really good time. And I was convinced that alcohol was a central part of that, and then that our relationship was going to deteriorate. Also, just like so wildly false. Our relationship is stronger than it's ever been, and I think that a lot of that is from my ability to refrain from alcohol and do this introspective work. And she has kind of seen it, and she's like, "This is so cool," and so she's kind of gotten on board too, and our relationship has grown so much because of it. And then another thing, I was like, oh, well, social situations just won't be the same without alcohol. Yeah, that's partly true. They won't be the same. They'll be different, for sure. But that doesn't mean that they'll be worse. And, perfect example, I went to California a month or two ago to meet up with this amazing group out there, trying to basically publicize ibogaine for veterans mental health healing. Wonderful group called Healing Heroes. And anyways, I show up. I didn't know a single person there. We were staying at this like beautiful VRBO in California, just outside of Los Angeles, and like this mansion, pool, everything, all this stuff. It was awesome. And I'm like, take a deep breath, and I walk in, and I didn't know really what I was going to be, encountering when I got in there. And I was kind of surprised to see like everyone was kind of partying, like people were drinking, having a good time, all this stuff. It's not like super typical in the plant medicine space that alcohol is a main part of a function, but I was like, okay, here we go. Like, man, and I had for a fleeting second this thought. It was like, oh man, it would be so easy to like loosen up with, with a drink. And it was there for just a second. I said, man, like, no, we don't need that. Just do your thing. And because of that, I was able to put my best foot forward. I didn't say anything stupid. I didn't do anything stupid. And I love saying that, like, I don't always do dumb stuff when I'm drinking, but the only time that I do dumb stuff is when I'm drinking. And so, none of that happened. I went to bed at like a fairly reasonable time. I went to bed at like midnight instead of going to bed at 2 and then just feeling like crap the entire rest of the day when we had stuff to do. I got up early the next day. I signed a new client. I meditated for a little bit, had this like amazing affirmation as the sun was coming up, all this like really cool stuff, because of my decision not to drink, and making that decision every single day. And yeah, like I was a little bit uncomfortable in that new social situation for a little while, and then I got over it. And I think that's a concept and a theme that is true in general about alcohol, and about giving up a substance that you're dependent upon. You have to face this uncomfortable moment for however long it takes to get comfortable. And then once you do, that comfort that it leads to is it's incredible. And so I really started being able to process, after the first 3 months of being uncomfortable, I started to process, okay, well, what was alcohol even doing for me at all? Because I'd like to think it was doing something for me. I was doing it all the freaking time. And what I really finally kind of came to and realized was that it was numbing me out from dealing with my internal stuff. And by cutting out the booze, this didn't like really happen for me until I was a few months sober. And it was actually out of my system, but I had to finally face myself. And that was really uncomfortable for a while, particularly accepting the facts that I have done a lot of like stuff that I'm not proud of in my life. I had to kind of face that shame, and I faced that guilt that I had bottled up and that I was just drowning out with alcohol for such a long time. And once I faced it, I was able to slowly start integrating this into this whole truth of who I am and what I've done. And I was no longer running from that. And it's not to say that I don't regret some of the things that I've done. It's certainly not to say that I'm not sorry. It's actually to say that I finally got to realize that I am sorry and that I do regret those things. And it was this really powerful experience, as it went along. And so I basically went from living this really like high energy, like really intensive performative lifestyle while I was drinking. And I was able to kind of like decouple from that. And I kind of settled into this more of like, I don't want to call it low energy. It's just a different energy. It's like a higher vibration if you'll go with that. But it's so much less performative. I don't have to try anymore. I don't have to try to be anybody but myself. And I had no clue what alcohol was actually doing to me. It really had its hooks in me. And so I got comfortable with who I actually am. And now everywhere I go, I just get to be that person. And that person is far from perfect, that's for sure. But I'm comfortable with me, and I'm comfortable with me trying to become better. And I would never have gotten to kind of experience this true me that I'm experiencing now had I not given up alcohol, and at least started giving up alcohol with that year commitment. And so that point where I started like feeling myself again kind of happened at about the 6-month mark. That's when everything really started to change and started to evolve along the line that it's evolving now. And it's kind of led me now to this really profound idea about how to achieve fulfillment and joy in your life, and certainly in my life. And so I think that the process looks different for everyone. I think everyone's at different stages. And I think it's important to stress that you've got to show yourself grace throughout this process. Only you can know when to push, when to rest, when to work hard, and when to kind of step back from things. Only you can know how to be gentle with yourself and how to be disciplined with yourself and when that needs to happen. And you're not going to know it innately. It's going to have to be something that you kind of like struggle with and force through for quite some time, probably forever. But the process definitely begins with defining what virtue is in your life. And that's going to look differently as you go. And maybe a better word for virtue is truth. Like finding what is your truth? What is the true you inside? What does your virtue look like inside? And it's okay not to have that answer, like the full answer fleshed out. I certainly don't. And I think we spend our whole lives refining what our virtue is. But it's important that we consider it right from the get-go. We have to have that picture in our head, like, okay, what matters to me? Who am I? This is a really important concept to wrestle with. And then it's about saying, okay, what are the roadblocks to achieving that virtue? For me, it was alcohol, big time. And, whatever path, like complex path leads us to get to this point of consideration of our virtues and roadblocks towards achieving those virtues, is pretty inconsequential, right? You're here right now, and you can ask yourself this question: what roadblocks are in my way to achieving this virtue? Again, with me, it was definitely alcohol. I used alcohol as an excuse for my laziness. I kind of let it hide things from myself. It turned me kind of into a liar about some things. All of these things that I just don't look at as virtuous qualities, and not qualities that I want to embody. And so even though everyone's answers are going to be a little bit different, the questions can still be the same. And so now it's like, okay, I've established maybe what virtue, I've started to establish what virtue looks like for me. I've started to establish what roadblocks are in my way. Now, how do I remove those roadblocks from my life? What's it going to take? And after they're removed, what does it look like for me to pursue my virtue at all costs? And that is how I become fulfilled in the daily moments of my life. And that's how I become more present in my life. And that's how I find love. That's how I find joy and fulfillment as I go, is the motivated pursuit of my own virtue. And again, I'm nowhere near perfect at pursuing my own virtue yet, but it's a lot easier without dumping poison into my body. This beautiful body and mind that I've been given by something or someone. It is so much easier to pursue that virtue without the poison running through me. And I am committed to continue trying to figure it out. Um, I really appreciate you if you made it this far in this video. Thanks for listening. And, if you've got any comments about your own journey with sobriety, I'd love to hear from you. You're also more than welcome to join our Ancestral Campfire community. We have things like this talking all the time in our forum. And then we have weekly workshops. Some are on sobriety, plant medicine, physical fitness, mental health, community, all sorts of different really interesting things. And you can access that link via the description below. And sure, with gratitude and curiosity, that's all for now. Cheers.